to share how I make my big batch spaghetti sauce, and then we may just keep going because I'm working on meatloaves too. Um, so typically I do this in a crock pot, but I didn't have the forethought to think ahead this morning and put it all in the crock pot. So I am going to cook it in batches in what would be a large pot for most people, but I actually have a bigger pot than this. So I'm going to put in 2 of my large packs of ground beef, which is 2.75 pounds and 2.61 pounds, and I am going to just dump them into this pot carefully without making a giant mess. And that's about as much as you want to put in there because you want to have room to be able to chop it up and stuff. I'm going to put that back. No, I'll leave it here so y'all can see what I'm doing. But I have my garlic that y'all saw delivered to my house the other day that I am going to add how much ever I feel like in here. I mean, you got to remember I've got like 6 pounds of ground beef in here, and I'm going to be using it for spaghetti sauce. So obviously you want garlic in your spaghetti sauce. Plus, the better you make your meat taste that's going in your spaghetti sauce, then you can buy the cheaper spaghetti sauce and have it still taste good. Because if you buy cheap spaghetti sauce and you don't doctor your meat at all, then your spaghetti sauce is still going to taste cheap. And if you do doctor it, it'll taste better. So I've got my garlic in there, and then I have these onions that I've diced up. So I'm going to put that in there too. Don't tell my kids because they think, oh, I don't like onions, but they cook down. You can't even tell, and it just gives it a better flavor. Obviously, you can use garlic powder and onion powder as well, but it's not going to taste as good. This just is better. So I'm going to stick that back on the stove. And so then I can just use my meat chopper. Y'all don't look at my mess on the stove. It'll get cleaned when we're done. We ain't worried about cleaning while we can. Alright, we're just going to kind of mash that down in there and give it a little bit. Let it cook some. Now we're going to go back over here and work on some meatloafs because I got no motivation, but I got to get this done. So that's what we're going to do. Alright, so I got my big bowl. Lorelai and Amelia crushed up my crackers for my breadcrumbs earlier. And I got all of my ketchup and mustard and all that good stuff. Yeah. Okay, now I got another pack of ground beef. And yeah, I just pulled it out of nowhere, right? I had a kid. I did food line pickup the other day, so they gave me all of my stuff in these brown bags, and so I just had a kid bring this up from the fridge downstairs, and I've just been pulling out of it as I'm using it. So I got this pack of almost 3 pounds of ground beef, which is perfect size for our family. I don't think most families probably eat 3-pound meatloafs. Probably like more 1.5 size, but we're not the normal size family. There's nothing normal about us. So now we're going to dump our meat into our bowl. Drop a spoon, of course, why not? And we're going to put 2 eggs in here. And I never use a recipe. I just make things up as I go because it's who I am. I don't like having to stop and check something. And I've been cooking long enough that I kind of just know what to do. So, I'm going to put 2 eggs in. And now, I'm going to wash my hands. Okay, now, earlier I measured these out so Lorelai would know how much we used, and we did about 2 cups, but again, I'm not measuring. You're just going to pour some in there. I think that looks about right. I am using cracker crumbs because that's what my mom always used. She always mashed up crackers and used them. But I also had a way overabundance of crackers that we had left over from some events. And you can also use, like, if you have bread that's stale or left over or something, you can toast it and then make it into breadcrumbs and put it in. You can also buy breadcrumbs at the grocery store, but that's definitely not a way to save, so I don't recommend that. Then we're going to add, let's see, we'll do our seasonings first. I add garlic powder. Oh, you know what? I forgot to add my onions. So we'll put some onions in here. Again, you got 3 pounds of meat, so you want to have good seasoning. So it's going to look like you're adding a lot, but it's not really. When I measured it a while ago, I did 2 onions, but now the onions that I have are tiny because I did a Food Line pickup order and they gave me this bag of little tiny baby onions. I would never buy those if I was picking them out myself, but beggars can't be choosers. Take what you get. And then pepper. Michael always tells me I add way too much seasoning because he thinks it looks like so much when I'm putting it in. But then he eats it and he likes it, so it must not be too much, right? Salt. Mustard. And you want about 2 tablespoons, I would say, ish, maybe 3, of the mustard. And then you're going to do about 3 times as much of that ketchup, maybe 4 times as much. I would say probably about a 1/4 cup, but again, who's measuring? Not me. And then I like to add Worcestershire sauce, or however you say that. It was pretty interesting to hear Lorelai try to pronounce it earlier when I was teaching her how to make this. And then I'm going to do some splashes of that in there. Obviously, you don't need much of that. Okay, now we're going to go over here and work on chopping up this spaghetti sauce mixture meat stuff. You can see it's already starting to like cook down. You can see it walking around in there. Probably not the best thing to try to do while I'm holding the phone, but who's getting out the truck? I ain't got time for that. So basically, you just want to mix it up well so that your onions and your garlic and everything is just incorporated. And I love this little meat masher thingy that I got. I wanted one forever, and I always just used a wooden spoon instead because it was too cheap, and I finally bought it when I was meal prepping for some stuff at church and how to make a lot of stuff. Really helps me out a lot. Okay, now we're going back over to our meatloaf. So I always start by kind of chopping into it with a wooden spoon to start getting it incorporated. But then obviously you have to use your hands to make meatloaf. You cannot make a meatloaf without mixing it with your hands. And if you do, somebody tell me how you do that, because I haven't figured it out yet. I think I've also just discovered the way to get my kids to be quiet because they have not made a peep since I started this live video. They're all just sitting over there being so quiet. Okay, I want to see what this mess looks like. See that? You can't get that incorporated without using your hands. I don't know of a way. we're gonna mix it up, and I always make sure to take my rings off first because I can't stand trying to get that out of my rings. So I'm gonna kind of turn the bowl so you can see. I just scoop it and then like mash it down. And earlier when I was teaching Lorelai and she was trying to do it, she's like, just think of it as a nido cube. Just think of it as a nido cube. And I'm like, yeah, except it was a cow. And she was like, what? But, so, you know, if your kids like those squishies that mine won't hush about, I guess you could let them do this as long as they wash their hands well. And then tell them it's a multi-purpose, right? Like they're getting to play with something and also making some food. Some of my cracker crumbs are a little bigger, so I'm just kind of crushing those up because I don't really want to have huge pieces of my meatloaf. But we was trying to get that done in a hurry this morning before we was going out the door. Now, if I was a person that thinks ahead, I would already have my pan out so that when I'm done right here, I could put it in my pan. But that's not who I am. It's in the cabinet over there that I have to wash my hands so that I can get it out.